All right. So very good morning, everyone. It's a Friday morning. I appreciate everyone giving us the extra couple of days because there are a lot of key things which are work in progress. So that's the reason we wanted that additional time. So yeah, thankful, grateful for, as always, for all your support. And Shiva has some interesting updates to share. So Shiva, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, thanks. So what we're going to do today is that there is no presentation, etc. What we're going to do is to basically kind of go in and basically look at the product, and basically I'm going to walk through the various features of the product and what basically we are going to be looking at over the course of the next week. And also to basically kind of give an assurance to everyone that all of the things that you folks were used to in earlier in terms of your this thing is all over here. So we are basically kind of making sure that all of those features are in here. So I'm just going to basically kind of get in here and talk this thing. Let me quickly share my screen. Give me a second.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Srikanth, hope you can see my screen. Just check.
Yeah, absolutely. Screen is visible. All good.
Okay, perfect. So, folks, basically, what I want to do is to basically kind of give a complete run through of the new V4 product. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the changes that we made in the V3 product to basically make sure that some of the concerns that were basically raised earlier in terms of certain things that you wanted to be in control with, you can essentially be in control with. And with that, after that, basically, I will kind of take any questions that are there, etc. Okay. So first and foremost, basically, we have introduced this new dashboarding platform, which essentially can show you all of the dashboards. And we have, just like as we had in V3, we have all of the dashboards basically developed in here, whether it be with compliance, whether it be the assets, whether network or whatever it is. We've taken all the dashboards which are critical and basically given it over here. And the thing is that this is a new dashboarding platform, so it basically looks a little better, more this thing. And second is that we've separated out every dashboard. Earlier, you would basically, if you wanted to see the details, you went to a different dashboard, and you saw a summary, you went into this different dashboard. But here, we have the ability to basically create tabs. And basically, you can switch between tabs, so you don't need to actually switch a complete dashboard in order to basically look at data. And what you're looking at here is basically the complete data for the entire global space. So if you want to basically flip this, now what you can do is you can choose any company over here, and then you can filter. So once you filter, you can apply this filter right here, and the data will change just for that particular company. And then you can switch off the filter. And once you apply that, you can get back to your global view. So with this, what essentially happens is that you have the ability to kind of switch between one company view, multiple company views. So you want to say, for example, you want to choose multiple companies. You can choose multiple companies. And when you apply the filter, you can essentially get the data based on those filters. I know the obvious question that will essentially come up with this is that, can I basically start filtering by using tags? And the answer is yes, because we are working on it to basically add tags for companies. And once we add tags for companies, it will be possible for you to essentially say, all of these companies belong to the financial domain. So I want to look at the entire dashboard just for the finance domain. So that is something that we are working on. So this essentially is a new dashboard module that we put in there. And this is something that we can very quickly turn around in terms of new widgets or anything that you may require. So please feel free. As you all of you know, we basically created a new Discord group. Please post on the Discord group. We will be happy to take and basically very quickly develop the entire set of pieces in terms of putting new widgets out there. Now, you can, for example, I can switch to a dashboard which shows all the network vulnerabilities across all the companies, and you can essentially see the complete breakdown of all of the companies. I can switch to, I can basically say, I want to see the remediation plan by company, and then it will essentially switch to the remediation plans basically being visible, how many companies are affected, what are the critical vulnerabilities, what are the high vulnerabilities, and all of that data. So this is basically something that we will keep enhancing these dashboards as we've done in the past. But again, as you see here, every dashboard has a summary, and then right next to that is the details. So you can essentially switch between these two pieces to essentially kind of say, I got the summary, now I want to see the actual data. You don't need to basically switch to multiple screens, and it's all right in there. And what we've done is that for all of these dashboards, we have, at least in the summary dashboards, what we've done is to kind of make it something that you don't need to scroll on. You always basically don't, because if you scroll, then we essentially lose your attention. So we've tried to keep all of the dashboards limited to just the size where you don't need to scroll on this. So let us know what you think on this. And we will basically keep enhancing this particular piece. Now, the second piece, which is like when you go into overview, you can see the dashboard, which is the default view that we get you into. Then there is essentially metrics. Now, metrics talks about right here, you can essentially see this was the piece that we talked about earlier, and it was there earlier, right? So you can essentially see all of the breakdown. You can see the risk score of across your companies. You can see the number of assets across your companies, and you can see basically how many companies you have. Now, I can basically switch to a certain company, and this entire view will basically switch to a company view where I will see data about that particular company and whatever is enabled for that particular company. I switch back to global, and I essentially get a complete view of this. Now, the question you may ask is that I know a lot of you have basically asked this question, which says, the V3 UI was far better. Why basically did you switch to this V4 UI? It is not intuitive. It is not easy for us to use. The point is that whenever we transition from one setup to another setup, it's always going to appear a little difficult to basically transition. But what is this UI trying to do? Let me explain. This UI is trying to basically make you as an MSP more efficient. And in fact, the layer on top, which is basically if you have MSSPs, we're going to make that also more efficient. The reason for why we are doing this is to basically kind of say that you need to look at all of your customers from a top level view rather than essentially going down specifically into singular people, into singular customers, and then looking at assets. Everybody is basically kind of going down the view of basically saying that, okay, let me go and look at each asset. The V3 user interface, while is something that we created, and the reason why we are transitioning to this kind of a user interface definition is primarily because of that, because V3 was very asset centric, which is you always went into each of the assets, you looked into the assets, and then you found everything in the assets. What we want to do over here is to kind of, and what we saw when we built V3, the request kept coming, which said, oh, can I get this particular feature in the global view? Can I get feature Y in the global view? Can I this get into the global view? And then there was no clean transition between the global view and the company level view. Second, for example, in V3, we had this limitation. If you had access to 2 companies only, then what would happen? The global view would be hidden for you. Then people said, I need a global view where I can see the companies that I have access to. Why is it that I'm not getting access to those 2 companies in the global view? So I'm missing out on a whole bunch of features that I can get if I'm at the global view. And that is essentially solved over here, because here, even if you have basically access to a subset of companies, these features are available, and these are basically only for those features which are these are available for those companies which you basically manage. So that way, what happens is it cleans out the entire interface, and you are able to switch between these different pieces. Next, if I basically get into a specific company, okay, so I'm going to get into this company called Flash, okay. Now, if you remember one thing, which was basically last week, we had a specific feedback which said this company is not visible clearly, and it is basically in one corner. So that was from Steve. And Steve, thank you for bringing this up to us. So in every screen, basically, you can essentially see this, what they call as breadcrumbs. And the first thing over there you see is the company. So you always know in which context you are basically looking at a particular company. Now, we basically covered dashboard and metrics, and then we basically have agents. Now, I can look at all of my agents. I can look at my probes. I can look at my lightweight agents. Plus, with a single switch, right, I can essentially look at this from a global view. I don't need to essentially work at a company level to look at my agents and see basically whether it is reported or it is active, it is inactive, all of that. So I can switch between the views of probes, lightweight agents, and basically any agents that are deprecated. And again, deprecated is something that we've defined as X number of not reporting in for X number of days are all deprecated agents. So this basically is a kind of the agent's view. And if you go to a particular company, then you can start installing agents, and I'll walk you through that process too. Now let's come to assets, right? So the assets is basically kind of something which is quite loaded. And if you basically click on assets, what you have is basically a complete view of all the assets. Now here, folks, one of the things that we mentioned in the past also, all of my agents are looking offline, my assets are looking offline. Please don't worry about it, because right now, to solve the issue that we had last week about there was a memory usage issue which was occurring on certain specific machines. It is not a global issue. It basically occurs in certain specific machines when we run certain specific commands. And that is something that we had to root cause. And so in order to do that, what we essentially did was we changed the heartbeat of the agent in terms of it sending the data. Because as you know that all of the lightweight agents and these agents are all basically now made real time, which means that they send data every 15 minutes, look at what changes have occurred in the last 15 minutes and post those changes over there. And this was primarily done again because in the earlier version, we constantly got tickets which essentially said, oh, I have basically installed this software, upgrade this software, but you are still showing that I'm vulnerable. And then the answer would be, oh, did you run a scan? So the concept was to again remove all of these manual tasks that you had to do in V3 and make this a platform which is more usable, which is the system should know when you install software. It should basically say that, yeah, you installed software. Now your job is done. Now you're remediated. So basically clean it out. And that is what this system will do. I'm also happy to note that we've already found out what was the root cause of the memory leak over there. And it was primarily occurring on domain controller machines. And this was occurring when we were querying the event log from the domain controller machines that the memory usage was very high. The way that we are fixing it is basically we are putting in a few techniques in terms of fetching a subset of events. And also basically we are going to be adding a flag which says, do you want event logs from this machine or you don't want event logs from this machine? And that will help you kind of mitigate this particular problem. Now, once we get into, once we are out of assets, we basically are talking about problems. Now, what problems, why are we basically talking about these things as problems? We should just say vulnerabilities and be done right. So the point is that, yeah, we can basically give you one long list of vulnerabilities, but how do you essentially kind of categorize it and how do you basically prioritize it? That's something that you and everybody else wants to know, right? So because it is practically impossible for any company or any set of technicians to essentially say, I'm going to basically kind of solve 100% of all the problems that are occurring in a particular company or across my companies. And what this does is to basically bring to the fore things which are actually problems and then showing you that these are high severity vulnerabilities, these are medium severity vulnerabilities, critical vulnerabilities, and all of those pieces, and the number of companies in which this particular problem is occurring, and the asset count. Now, I can switch to a particular company view, and then in that particular case, the company count goes away, and what you're seeing is basically exactly this company's details, and again categorized by the same thing. And what are we categorized? We've basically given you things like what are the CISA notified vulnerabilities? Do they exist? What are the SSL TLS vulnerabilities that you have to fix? These are all categories which can essentially, so CISA notified vulnerabilities means that you have to basically act on them immediately. Now, SMB vulnerabilities are something that you need to fix very quickly. Yeah, and then when you click on any of this, all of this is actionable. So it's not just a number, right? So when you click on this, it shows you basically what are the problems that are there and the number of assets that basically are impacted because of this. Now, when you click on assets, you essentially get the list of assets that basically are impacted because of this, along with their host name. So you basically are dealing with it in a manner where it is fully actionable and not basically something that you're shooting in midair, right? The same thing with EPSS greater than 0.95. Now, EPSS greater than 0.95 means you basically have to get this resolved as soon as possible. And the timeline for this is 3 days. And then here you basically click on it, you can get the assets that are there. So it's a very simple view for you to basically figure out what categories of problems are there and figure out how you can basically mitigate those problems. Again, how do you mitigate those problems? By using solutions. And this is essentially the same thing that we had in the patch, which is remediation plan. Again, what should you do? Is it a software patch? What is the product that you need to do? And then what is the fix that is available? And then what are the number of assets that are affected by it? Okay. And then we are releasing the patch engine very shortly. And once the patch engine comes in, you will essentially see a button here, which will enable you to patch from here or do an auto patch. So that is also basically part of this entire scheme of things. And now I can switch this to, I want to see all the 100 over here. You can essentially see all of the 100 pieces. And again, it is the reason you see all of this Microsoft Edge to this is because the source of all of this, each of them is in a different version of Microsoft Edge. So it will essentially, by the source version, it will essentially kind of group all of this. So these are all the remediations that are in there. Now, getting into things like you can, of course, as we had earlier, you can look at what are the pending OS patches. We have a nice view for basically all the ports that are open in a company. So I can see that these ports are insecure. How many vulnerabilities are there by ports? What are the kinds of ports that are open? So it kind of gives you a very good view of like what ports are open in a company and across companies. And when you click on global, as you can see this across companies. So you kind of can get a good idea of what technology, what pieces are there. So because we also basically kind of look at what ports are open in terms of MongoDB or MS SQL, MySQL, etc. And apart from vulnerabilities, it gives you a good, this thing saying that what would be your, technically, what is your attack surface with all of these pieces, right? Now, basically, if I go into a particular, what we can do is that if I click on overview, I will just go into a little bit of how we do configurations, etc. So when you go into the overview, you basically see first is new company, which is I want to create a new company or add a new company. You can do this right here. You can delete any existing companies from here. You basically have the integrations tab where you can configure all the integrations. So you click on this, you can see all the integrations. And this is exactly like how we did all the integrations in V3. So that does not matter. The next one is application baseline. Now in application baseline, just as in V3, I can essentially create application baseline rules. I can choose the OS type, I can choose the OS name, and I can basically choose what are the allowed and denied applications. And I can choose whether I want to include certain companies on which this application baseline needs to be run, or exclude the companies on which these application baselines need to be run. Again, the ability to basically include a set of tags so that basically I say I want to run this baseline only on Windows servers or Windows desktops or Windows this thing. So you can basically attach tags to it, or you basically want to ignore certain tags. So those are things that you can essentially do right from here. We have a whole bunch of things that you can set up over here in terms of users, your profile, and all of those pieces. I'm just quickly going to, that will take me back to this thing. And then you can look at your plan. What is your current plan? What is your billing? What is the asset count? What is the accrued cost that you basically have from each of the companies, right? So this is useful basically when you want to bill from your side. And then when you go to get started, it basically shows you all your tenant info. What are the, like the documentation is right here. You can see all the documentation links over here so that it becomes easy for you to kind of navigate in. And these links are there. We are also bringing these links into each of the pages, and that will be there. And then you basically have the ability to search for a particular CVE, look at its details and all of those pieces. And of course, you can look at all the system events and alerts basically that are occurring on the entire system. So all of these menus are basically available on this right-hand side. And the basic concept is that you shouldn't have it to basically go and search for which menu has, can I configure this, can I configure that? Based on the context that you are in, you will essentially be able to see the right-hand side menu, which will allow you to configure all of these items. Now, if I basically go to a company level view, like you don't get into a company and then add a company, right? So those go away. Here, basically, I have the ability to define tag rules. I can create tags and basically provide rules for all of the tags. So that is right here. Second is that, again, you have settings, which are company level settings, which is what are the EDR applications that basically you're allowing for this particular company. What are the backup software? All of this essentially is right here. And then basically, if you want to remote agent install, you can basically enable remote agent install of the, which basically will install it as a lightweight agent. You can basically set up all of the details of the company over here, and those will essentially be put out there. Then we basically have all the application baseline rules you can define at a company level, and you have alerts, which again can be defined at a company level, which can be viewed at a company level. Now, let's basically then switch back, and then we basically have, for example, one of the things that we constantly get asked is like, certificates, and basically what are happening to the certificates. So you can essentially see like what are the certificates, what's the IP, etc. And if it is self-signed, then it will essentially mark this as self-signed. And then if the certificate has expired, it basically tells you that certificate has expired. And if the SSL certificate is expiring in 30 days, it will tell you that the SSL cert is expiring in 30 days. So all of these, and basically if it's a secure certificate or not, all of those details are basically available right here. So that is the next part of what we do, which is basically kind of go through the entire set of certificates. And we even can basically give you notifications on when the certificate is about to expire, so that you can renew it in time, because that's something that we ourselves face a number of times where we forget to renew a certificate or somebody misses a deadline. And then basically your site starts showing that it is vulnerable, and that becomes a problem. So this, again, this is basically the vulnerabilities, which is basically showing all the vulnerabilities across all of the systems. And this is basically a simple view, which is very similar to what we saw there. And then the application vulnerabilities kind of talks about, these are the applications, and these are the software versions. What is the OS on which this is affected, and how many vulnerabilities are there across all of them, and what is the link to the asset. So this basically gives you a different view from an application perspective as to how to attack your vulnerabilities and how to take care of them. And then we have the network scan findings. The network scan findings basically give you all of those things that we essentially detect from a network scan perspective. So we are going out and basically detecting a whole bunch of things using network scans. And this is essentially what we call as the unauthenticated scan. So we basically figure out like vulnerabilities in all of these systems, and basically provide you with a view saying that these are all the different kinds of vulnerabilities that we found. And this is basically all the network vulnerabilities. What it means is that we have a probe, and from the probe, we are essentially sending packets and basically getting data back saying whether we are getting any signal which can be used by an attacker and can be used to basically penetrate the machine. Now, when for example, let's take a simple example, right? Like you probably somebody's running WordPress, and WordPress is the WordPress version is basically is determinable basically by using some PHP info. And I find there are certain vulnerabilities which allows me to take control of the machine. Then this will essentially point out those things to you. Now, in our previous version V3, we had approximately, I think, around 83 to 84 checks that we did. The current version basically runs more than 550 odd checks that it basically runs as part of the part of the entire system. So you can see that this is greatly enhanced. It will give you a lot of data because it is basically doing all of these tests, and it is basically more aggressive in trying to find out what is really working, what is really the information that's being exposed from the particular machine, and how can it basically figure out very simple things like what are the versions which are running, and using that information, if an attacker can basically get in, this basically also will get into this whole space. So this is something that we already had in the previous version. This has been enhanced over here. Now let's get to compliance. Now, when we get into compliance, again, I just want to point out everywhere that we go, you can see that the company name is right here, as long as I'm in the company view. If it's global, then you won't see the company view. Now, the compliance types over here, you can essentially see again, in the past, what we basically had done was we just gave you a dump of, yeah, these are all some CIS standards. And basically, these are compliant, non-compliant. I think it was a challenge for many people to navigate and understand as to what did it mean and what did it not mean, right? So that is something that was there. Here, what we've done is that we have basically kind of classified everything. We basically kind of figure out automatically whether you're compliant, non-compliant. Second is, we have something which says manual compliant and manual non-compliant. What this manual compliant and non-compliant basically means is that if something cannot be determined by the system, but is something that you can upload evidence for, you can do it in this system, and then you can basically get a complete report. So this way, those are manual compliances that you can essentially drive for. So in CIS, you don't find these manual compliances because we are able to automate all of the things that are being asked for. However, if you go to something like PCI DSS, right? So you will essentially see a lot of items which are manually non-compliant. So if you click on this item, you basically see the particular section saying that, for example, all security policies and operational procedures that are identified in requirement 1 are documented, kept up to date, in use, known to all the affected parties. Now, this is something that a system by itself cannot determine. However, what can be done is that I can choose this and I can essentially say, I want to upload evidence for this. When I click on upload evidence, I can essentially provide my comments. I can upload a file, which is the evidence. I can say whether the action that by uploading this file, am I compliant? What is the status of the implementation? It is effective, not applicable, not assessed, not effective, not implemented. And then what is the quality of the evidence that you're providing? So you are in control of determining what is the quality of evidence that you're providing. And what is the test type? Is it simple or is it a full assessment? Now, what we mean by simple or full assessment is a lot of these standards basically allow you to say that I'm going to do my audit on a subset of assets and then basically call that audit as complete. There are certain people who basically want an audit of every single system in the environment. Now, this depends on your client requirements and the standards that they have to follow, but you may be called on to basically do a reduced scope assessment or basically a full-fledged scope assessment. In this particular case, what we are doing is that we are giving you the ability to define that what is your test type. Is it a full scope assessment or a reduced scope assessment? Going forward, basically, our team is also working on the ability by which you can essentially choose that I want to basically run my compliance on these specific assets. So we'll be giving you the ability to tag anything. And then based on tags, only those assets will essentially be allowed to, will be part of the compliance scan. And then what will happen is that the reports and everything that is generated is based on that compliance scan view rather than anything else. Now, let me just quickly go back to the dashboards. I basically want to very quickly go over here. And then, like, for example, you saw compliance scans, right? Now, if I go into compliance scan CIS, I can essentially see the entire set of compliances, the compliance dashboards. And I'm going to be very candid in saying that well, some of the best dashboards that I am seeing basically in the compliance space is by a gentleman by the name of Michael Telanik. And I think we will be kind of working with him to essentially kind of push our data into the dashboards that he's creating, so that if anyone of you have Power BI, then we can essentially kind of push that data into those dashboards. And we'll also basically look at ways by which we can essentially bring that dashboard or reproduce that dashboard into our UI, so that we can, with permission, so that we can essentially kind of provide the same kind of data. Because I've been following him, and his dashboards are like phenomenal. So I think we should kind of give that kind of a view to you, rather than basically something which is not basically fully there. So we are working towards that, and a lot of the dashboards that we are doing basically will reflect a lot of these pieces. Now, we also have basically support for, if you're from Australia, then you have essentially 8 support. We have all of the other compliances also that are basically in place. Now, we have basically Active Directory. We can essentially get into Active Directory. We can look at all of the details of Active Directory. You can see OUs, you can see users, you can see computers, GPOs, groups, all of these pieces. All of these things which are used to in V3, all of those are basically right here. So I'm not going to kind of dwell into all of that stuff, because that's something that can be looked at any point of time. The same thing with Azure Active Directory. You can basically see all of the data which is basically there for Azure, all of the, whether MFA is enabled for a user or not enabled for a user. All of these basically can be determined here. Now, we have a PII. Basically, we have not configured PII here, but this thing is a PII is nothing but the old PII scan that was running. So from a feature parity perspective, we brought in all of the features that are there in terms of whether it's attack surface mapping, application baselines, certificates, all of these pieces have been brought in. We basically have, so now I will just quickly get into something that a lot of people are used to, which is basically we always talked about the asset details view. So we have the complete asset details view with all of the details out here. You can see all the problems, which was basically the vulnerabilities and all of those pieces, which is here, solutions, all of these pieces. And here, what you can see is that we support, just as in the previous version, we basically kind of discover all kinds of devices, whether it's endpoints, whether it's network devices, and we basically bring all of them to the fore. The main point that I'm saying is that one of the reasons for why we are trying to get better and better at this whole thing is that we basically want to scan more and more of the network and basically bring almost like a network view of the entire set of devices, and basically give you a positioning in terms of what is your actual what is your actual exposure, and basically bring that all into a risk score. So that's essentially what we are trying to do. Now, basically, let's get into reports. Okay, so just as we had in the previous version, you have all of the standard reports. Right now, basically, you see a lot of the reports are documents, but we are in the process of just very quickly releasing the PowerPoint versions also, probably basically in the next day or two. So you will see PowerPoint versions, you see the doc versions, you see all of the reports in terms of compliances. So for example, I can download the CIS compliance report. So I go in here. I've asked the team to basically change this, where you basically can just download it from there as we had earlier. If you download the report, then you essentially see the complete details of, save it. And you can see the entire compliance report basically built out here. I basically have other reports that I've downloaded, which is out here. So you can essentially see, for example, I want to see all the extension programs. I can choose multiple of these and download them at the same time. We basically have run multiple jobs at this particular thing, so you can see the history of all. So you can basically get the reports as of a particular date, as of a particular time. All of those reports basically are available here. So all of these are basically standard reports. So as you can see, Active Directory, agents, vulnerabilities, asset reports, Azure Active Directory, compliance reports, security posture reports, compliance report card, security report card, external scan reports, remediation plan reports. All of these are reports which are available, and these are all standard reports that are there. But the real thing is basically that what we do is we basically switch to global right now. And then what we do is we basically get into the report builder, right? So I want to go into the report builder. Because what we've done is that all of these standard reports that you saw right now that we built, right? We did not build these separately. We did not basically do anything different. We used this particular report builder that we are offering you to build those same reports. Now, what do these what does the report builder do? We basically build these report blocks. I remember that 2 months back, I basically presented a version of the report builder where the biggest problem that I believe that we had was that we basically did not give these blocks. We basically said, yeah, you can basically query the database and bring whatever you want. And then if we basically have to query the database, and we know that basically these database schemas basically keep changing all the time, and then you will get frustrated with us saying that, what are you doing? So what we've done is that every single piece that we essentially did till now, all of the reports that we've created, everything is basically part of the palette over here. So you can essentially take anything which is there in this palette and drop it in here. And you will essentially, it will essentially kind of put this, these reports in here. It will basically kind of create it. I can put a couple of graphs here, right? I can basically do this, put this graph here. Okay. Now, I will basically get some assets. I will basically get all the probe agents. I'll get an agent summary in here. That seems interesting, right? And then once I basically created, I'm happy with my report, I can essentially say save. Now, when I say save, I can essentially say, what do I want for a cover page? Again, this is something that we've done, which is basically less like you have with Microsoft, where you can basically create multiple cover pages. You will be able to create your own cover page, as well as essentially use multiple cover pages and designs that we basically provide. So I will save this template as basically a demo to as a template. I save this. So now my template has been created. Now I can basically edit the template or do whatever I want with the template. Now I can essentially also say that I want to basically run these templates. So I can. So now basically what I'll do is that I can't run reports from this perspective. So I go here and I basically say for hash, basically I want to generate this report. Now the report will be queued. It will basically get generated. Then if you look at this, you will essentially see that the report will get generated. And then once the report is generated, I can download I can basically download that particular report by clicking here. I can download this report. So you can see this is basically what I chose, right? Prepared for hash. I got all the Active Directory computers in here. I got the Active Directory groups in here. And then I have enabled, disabled computers, security count, non-security count, agent summary. Now, one of the things which basically we didn't have last time, but we have introduced this time is our graphs are not, earlier, if you remember our images, those images used to be these graphs used to be images. And so basically it was very difficult to kind of work with those images. And I remember that a lot of you basically told us that this looks like the 1990s and 2000s piece, right? Now, this is what we've done right now is to basically create this as a full graph object, basically, which is in the Word document. And if you want to edit it, you can essentially click in here and you actually can edit the data that basically is in here with the Excel. So if you want to essentially change anything in the report in terms of, say, for example, you have certain set of vulnerabilities, but you believe that those vulnerabilities are not something that you want to report on, and those counts are basically reflecting there. You could change those change those while in the right button down, make the changes, and then the graph will reflect. Let me just quickly go back and open that report again. So this was basically demo to team, which was generated today. And then the second thing which I can do is that I can say, okay, this is a graph, but I don't like the way it looks. Ideally, what I would like to do is I would like to make this a donut, right? So I change this to a donut, and now it's basically a donut. So you're not limited by what we are sending you. You can basically change the type, etc., because we have created this as a Microsoft Classic object. So that is essentially something that is basically changing with this. And with that, you will basically be able to create your own set of reports and basically customize all of them. Now, apart from these customizations, one of the things that we always need is basically the ability to customize the settings. So we can, as you can see there, again, the menu is context sensitive. We can essentially determine what is there, what should be there, what should not be there. So now, going back basically, so one of the things that I want to very quickly go over. So one of the things that we want to very quickly go over is now the report settings, right? So in the reports, we basically have settings where you can basically set up what should be your watermark text, what should be your header text, what should be the header alignment. It should be basically center, left, right. You can choose that. What should be the footer text? What should be the footer alignment? And you can basically choose to add an image to your header or an image to the footer, or add all of these together. So this way, what happens is you can basically completely make this report completely your own. And very shortly in the same place, just as I showed you, we will basically be able to set up your cover pages based on your interest over here. So even for standard reports, we will be able to set up the cover pages as you require with the standard reports too. So this basically will kind of covers all of the pieces. Now, if you really look at it from the perspective of V3 to V4, we have transitioned all of the features over from V3 to V4. Did we have any hiccups? We had major hiccups in the last week. I think one of the key things was that we had a lot of learnings in terms of like the problems associated with some of the migrations that we did, etc. But we are cognizant of that. We basically understand the pain that it caused in a number of cases. And now, going back to that, what I'm going to do is that I'm just quickly going to the next set of features that we are talking about, which is I'm going to go to portal.my cybercns.com. Okay, so this is our V3 version. So as we said, you can look at it, you can basically switch a company and you see all the assets. So it's very asset-centric view. So Let's go through this, right? So we have assets, we have firewalls, we walk through it. I showed you the remediation plan under settings. We have standard reports, we have vulnerabilities reports, we have compliance. I showed you all of this. Active Directory, we have network scan findings, we have external scan, we have PII scan, we have attack surface mapper, right? We have the application baseline. I showed you the ability to create application baseline rules. We have the notification rules, which are in there in the settings. We can go through that. We have the integrations, we have the schedulers, and we have the settings. So we migrated all of the, from a feature parity perspective, we are basically probably, I would say, 93 to 94% there. We have another 6% which is left, which we will essentially complete during the course of the next day or two. Now, with that said, one of the things that we would basically kind of walk through is certain changes that we have made essentially in the migration piece. So the first thing is that when you go into the global view and then you look at probes and agents, whenever you basically choose a particular agent, now I want to talk about a few things. A few of you basically said, oh, I don't want V4 agent right now. The first and foremost thing that you can see over here, you see a field which says is replicated. What does is replicated mean? First and foremost, I want to kind of talk about something. When we sent a mail a couple of weeks back, talking about the migration around the New Year's time, I think we made a very fundamental mistake. The fundamental mistake was that we said this was a migration. The honest answer is this was not a migration. This was a replication. We were replicating your environment into a new location and giving you access to the replicated environment so that you can essentially give us feedback. So we are fixing that right now. And now you can see with each agent that we have, you essentially see a field which says is replicated. If it says cross, that means that that particular agent has not been replicated over. And this could be different reasons. And the second one is that if it's a tick, then it means that the agent has been replicated. Now, we also basically have a section which is called the V4 agent status. What does this allow us to do? So the point is that when we click on a particular agent, like I can click on these two agents, the global actions that I can essentially do are increased. One is I can say I want to enable the V4 agent, in which case, if it is not installed, it will basically install the V4 agent and it will essentially migrate you over, okay? The second is that I want to disable the V4 agents. So what this does is that it completely, we've basically taken a decision that we will not basically remove the V4 agents, because eventually at some point of time, everybody will essentially migrate to the V4. So, but we disable the V4 agent, what it will do is that it will basically move that agent into a disabled state so that it will not run. And so you can choose at your time and at your leisure that you will essentially kind of basically migrate this into V4 so that you don't have any impact of any of the versions that are coming in. You don't need to worry about any of those pieces. You can essentially do this and say disable the V4 agents and it will disable it. And as I said, it is basically something that you can do on multiple, you can just do it on multiple agents at the same time. And I can click here and I can essentially say disable the V4 agents. It will send messages to all of them and it will disable all of those agents. So this is something that we have. The same thing holds good for lightweight agents too. So you choose all of the lightweight agents and then you essentially say that I want to essentially disable the V4 agents. It will disable the V4 agents. And when you want to enable it, you can basically enable it. So this feature has been given to you, to everyone, because we understand that earlier there was a little bit of a issue with basically us installing all of the agents, and some of you would like to kind of roll that back at this point of time and then take it up when basically you are ready. And this feature that we've added in V3 will allow you to kind of do that particular piece. The only request that we would essentially place on all of you is that please leave a few agents running and basically evaluate the system, even if you're removing all the other agents, because this system is basically transitioning into a production-ready system very quickly. And that is the commitment that we are making. And I've shown you basically the system. The system has basically come a long way since in the 2 weeks that we've been talking to various people. And all of you basically have given us feedback. We've taken the feedback to heart. Now, that said, I think basically there was basically some very there was some a lot of talk that we had basically over the Slack channels, etc., where people were very frustrated, and I very clearly stated that if there was a screw up, yes, that screw up is basically entirely my responsibility. I take ownership for it, but at the same time, this is the way that we have to move forward and we have to progress. And basically, we request for your patience, your ability to basically look beyond a particular problem and basically see the overall goal that we basically are working towards, so that we can together basically get to that particular goal. So the main thing that I would like to basically talk to everyone about today is that we have complete parity in terms of features from V3 to V4. The reporting basically is far superior. The PowerPoint templates that we're going to bring are going to be much more powerful, and we will basically walk you through all of this. And the only thing which I would say is that in the next weekly call on Wednesday, the way that we would like to do that particular call is that you log into your system, I'm going to log into our system, and then we're going to basically go screen by screen, and we're going to take feedback from you saying that works well, does not work well, what needs to be changed, what is good, what is bad. And that is basically going to be a session that we're going to do next Wednesday. And we take your feedback back, and then we'll basically fix what needs to be fixed, and we'll basically bring this in. If you folks feel that no, we still want to basically stay with V3, no problem, you can stay with V3. But the point is that as we progress, we basically, as I said, this will help you, V4 will help you become more efficient, will help you basically become faster as we move forward. Are there hiccups right now? Yes, 100% there are hiccups. And do I take responsibility for some of the problems that occurred? I do take responsibility for those problems. And basically, I have already said, if anybody basically feels that they need to be compensated, please let me know. I will do that on my personal account. But however, we have basically now provided the mechanisms. I know David and a couple of people have been asking, you were supposed to migrate everything. The answer is yes, we were supposed to migrate everything. We received a lot of feedback and a little bit of a backlash on the entire piece from in these channels that we basically are. And so after that, we basically stopped pushing the migrations into the queues. And basically right now, we've given the entire ability to migrate in your portals. And my request is that what we are working on right now is that we made, so what was last week, a lot of people had basically data which was not visible, my agents disappeared, etc. There was nothing which disappeared, nothing happened. It was basically, I'll be very candid, right? What happened was that we basically have a transition from OpenSearch to Postgres as a database. We have basically done a whole bunch of things. The problem that started occurring is that in order to basically provide the a set of details that basically we needed in the views. So in the earlier one, it was extremely simple, right? Because I basically got a set of assets and I showed the assets. I got a set of vulnerabilities, I showed the vulnerabilities, and I did no correlation, right? So basically there was no correlation between A and B, so the linkages were not there. So it was linkages that you had to do manually by moving in between different screens. This particular screen, if you really look at every screen, every number in the screen is basically linked up. Every thing that you click basically leads you to where you need to go, rather than basically just saying that this is just something that, yeah, I gave you a number and this number is not actionable. You click on the asset count, you see the list of assets. You click on the problem count, you basically see the list of problems. So this particular view that we are basically taking of the whole thing caused an immense problem with the way that database is structured, because it was essentially kind of I think a lot of you are technical people. So you would have seen basically it is basically multi-table joins. And the moment you put multi-table joins, what happens is the database basically gets into a frenzy. And that exists exactly what happened during the course of last week. And basically we kind of went through that entire process of basically kind of decoupling all those queries, making them simpler, making them simpler, making them simpler. And what we've got today is basically kind of a version that essentially is, I would say basically with 85% to 90% there in terms of performance. There's still basically another 10 to 15% of the areas where basically things are have to be optimized. And I can give you the exact ones also. It's like application baseline needs to be optimized. So a couple of those pieces also need to be optimized, but we are working through those problems and basically we'll get there. So my only request is hang in there with us and we will essentially get you through the destination. The whole concept of why are we doing this, right? We want to, I want to be very clear in saying that we, kind of some of the messages in the Slack channel actually kind of hit me very hard in the terms of when people refer to you as a vendor. I don't believe that we are a vendor because if I'm a vendor to you, then I think you should not essentially use our product. The point is that we never build this product as a vendor, because if I'm a vendor, I will put a marketing team, I will put a sales team, and I'll basically call you down and basically talk to you 100 times and force you to buy my product. And I will essentially give you prioritization saying that this will take X number of days and number of hours. So basically, I have to prioritize in the list. We do not take prioritize on the list. You send us features, we develop them, because that is what we do. We do not basically say that any one partner is more important than the other partner, or we don't basically build councils. We don't build any of those. Why? Because we basically are committed to the MSP community and making sure that we provide a viable security product for the MSP community. And our goal for 2024 is not basically to just become a vulnerability management product, because that is there. So we have vulnerability, we have compliance, but the goal for 2024 and the reason for why this whole V4 build and this whole struggle that we're going through, because I could have been perfectly happy with basically V3 and said, yeah, V3 is working well. We can add a few features here and there, and then basically get move forward, right? But then what would happen? Basically, then I would become obsolete as a platform. And second, I would stop adding value to you. Well, how will I add value to you? When I bring in, so today, most of you basically know that when you are using my platform, you are basically paying a few cents for every agent that for every asset that we scan, right? If you basically take any RMM, you are basically paying them anywhere between $3 to $5 to an RMM. We are basically there almost like 80% in terms of what an RMM does with our patching and other pieces that we are doing. So can we basically help you basically get there? Can we basically, you pay $5 to $7 for an EDR. Now, with the real-time tracking that we are doing, we basically are understanding what is coming on the system, what is not coming on the system, etc. So could we essentially be a EDR for the low-end clients? These are things that we basically keep thinking about and basically saying that how do we improve the profitability for the entire MSP community? And we have a lot of people who have contributed into this product, and that is why basically the product is what it is today. These ideas are not something that we generated. It's neither me, Srikanth, or none of us have generated. These are ideas that have come from the MSP community. And we have always said, this is a product that you guys own. So you guys have to essentially, is there a problem? We are only executing on the directions that are being provided by the MSP community. And we will basically get there. We will essentially make this a product that you will be proud of having. And it is basically something that has been created by you and will be fostered and nurtured by you. So that is essentially the whole idea of this particular product. So as I said, if you still believe that we are a vendor and we basically have to interact as a vendor, then the idea is that basically there are other products which basically have vendors, which have account managers, etc. We are focused on basically building a product that will help the MSP community. We want you to be able to offer the services to the customer. You do not, we want you to patch your systems efficiently and in time. And at the end of it, basically be happy that you can spend time with everyone so that you don't have to basically kind of get up for that call which says, oh, I'm being compromised. Because this is equivalent of basically saying, I always take the example of healthcare, right? So there are two ways in which healthcare works. there is basically what is called preventive medicine. Preventive medicine is like the things that you do: go to the gym every day, eat healthy, make sure that you do a test every 6 months, and basically make sure that all parameters are right. This particular tool falls exactly in that ambit, which says that keep healthy so that you can prevent a disease from occurring. Now, all of the other tools that basically you use are in the ambit of saying that, okay, now you basically are infected with the disease. Now, how do I basically get there? But if you basically work on the prevention, you basically will save a whole bunch of money, because the moment you go into the realm of detection and basically it's very simple, right? The moment you basically are not healthy, keeping healthy, then you run a whole battery of tests. You lose, you pay a ton of money on tests. Your insurance premiums go up. So if you really look at it, the security world that we live in is exactly equivalent of the medical world. And what we need to do is to essentially kind of bring this whole preventive medicine in place for the security world. And that is what we are striving to do. And as we go during the course of this year, with blessings from all of you and basically good wishes from all of you, we will add all of those features that you require to make this excellent product. And that is our commitment to all of you. Okay. So with that, I will stop my monologue. And Srikanth, I saw a lot of this thing. So can you help me kind of get through the questions?
Little over time, I'm not sure. I don't know how many of these questions we can cover, but we can attempt that certainly. Okay, is there a way to tell if my users have signed into the new portal?
Yeah, there is basically if you, okay, so basically if you go to, I'll just show you one second. Just give it a minute to load. So over here, if you can basically see that, you can see all, if you go over here, if you go to your organization, right? So this is my organization. And then under my organization, I can see the users. And for each of the users, basically, I can see the complete details in terms of when they were basically, what are the access token created, and all of those details I can see. So you can see that whether they've logged in, whenever they last logged in, that will come under the last modified. So you can see complete list of this thing. And you can also see, you can see, I think settings, you have, I think we have an audit log section over here, right? Yeah, so basically you can essentially see all of the details of the user's login over here. You click on a user, you can essentially see when he logged in, when was the access token created, whether they changed their password, all of those details are in here.
Authorizations are on the left side there.
Yeah, you can see all the authorizations.
Thank you. Okay, Sebastian has a question that for each organization on the website, he's seeing duplicated devices, sometimes in a triplicate.
As I said, just give us a couple of days. That was essentially a bug. So we're basically going to be running rescans for all of the environments. And basically they will, all the duplicates will essentially kind of be merged and it'll disappear.
And Christopher has one that 70% of his devices are showing offline.
As I explained, the reason it's showing offline is because of this rule that we put, because of the agent that we put earlier, which said basically it was going to check in every 3 hours rather than 15 minutes. So the moment we essentially release this new agent, automatically everything will come online. It is not actually offline.
Sean has something called a database errors that he's getting when he's selecting an endpoint to see vulnerabilities in V4.
As I said, we basically made all of these transitions now. So if today he's facing it, then please let me know. I will look at I will look at that specific pod. But apart from that, we've kind of fixed everything in the pod. But my only request is, we are basically going to be sending a message to all the agents to basically resend us the information during the course of this weekend and next week. So once we basically send that information, the refreshed information should be clean, and basically you should not have any errors on the portal.
Okay. Can you demo how to push a patch during this meeting?
In the next week's meeting, yes, we'll demo it.
Correct. Todd, yes, like you said, we did have that, we take the responsibility of that. It was clearly not a migration. It's more a replication and it's just incorrect communication on our side. So we'll aim to get better at that. David has a question. Why can't we click on the breadcrumbs to jump to that company or a higher level option?
Pardon?
David, I'm not quite sure if I could understand a question. Please, can you explain that?
I think what he's saying is that when you look at the breadcrumbs aren't active. There is nothing. You can't click on the breadcrumbs at the top left. If you're showing
Okay.
the company name, then to the right, there's no action on the breadcrumbs.
Got it. Okay, so
Yes.
probably work that we can take a note of. And,
Yeah. That.
Non-critical.
got it. Thanks, Steve. Okay, just going on to, there are quite a lot of questions. I'm just trying to take. Adam has a question. Why are you using Google Analytics on your site? I can check with if we have an agency who's building our website, I can check if they've embedded Google Analytics. Is there any particular problem with that aspect? I would imagine that's something that everybody uses.
We are using Google Analytics to essentially see if people are basically dropping off certain pages or basically are encountering errors on certain pages, so that we can essentially kind of.
Yeah, our bounce rate and sync can be made better. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you resolved the issue with Azure SSO authentication?
Yes, we have. The only thing is that, like, folks, basically we are basically, I will tell you this, we are basically creating a custom login screen, because the way that it works with Zetadel is that when you enter a tenant name and you say login, right? So what happens is that if you're logging into, you have to basically log into that specific tenant. And so basically the settings of the tenant have to come. So basically there is a parameter that needs to be passed. However, there are certain cases where you may not be able to pass the tenant, which is why we basically have given you two options, which says login with a normal login, and second one is a login with an external provider. So if you're basically logging in with Azure or anything, just click on login with external provider and you will essentially be logged in.
Steve Polak has a question. The upload evidence button seems disjointed from the compliance ID. Would it be better or possible to put the evidence upload button to be accessible in line with the manual non-compliant item? And more on the same.
For stating that, because I told my team the same thing. They said, no, this is fine. So I'm glad that they heard it from you.
How do we add Active Directory data as blank there? From Chris.
The Active Directory credentials, then basically the Active Directory data will sync.
Benny has a question. Are you able to still remediate some issues directly from within the dashboard per site?
Yes.
Okay, when attempting to download more than one report at a time, it gives please select only one record message.
So basically, we have to enable download of multiple reports. We will basically get that.
Okay. In V4, we'll be able to run one-time assessments. So far, I haven't found it on the platform. This is an important tool and would hate to lose it.
No, you will get one-time assessments. We are just waiting for the stabilization of all the other features. The moment that is done, the one-time assessment, to put it in perspective, the one-time assessment is nothing but a probe with the user interface. So this is all that basically we are doing right now. So there is a probe with a user interface, and that is all that basically we are doing right now. And so that will be available basically in the next a couple of weeks. We will basically make that available, and it will be a separate section for assessment.
Tim Super has a question on will the history of our report jobs sync over to the new portal, because we have over a year of generated reports occurring each week and want to know if we can download them as an archive or will they automatically carry over. Sometimes an auditor requests reports going back 6 months, and we love that the portal has a history of all reports to grab easily. He goes on to say further that we have 29 reports we generate each month: active directory, remediation, vulnerability, and many various reports. The job history has them generate every week, and we have to review our financial institutions every month to look for AD accounts expired, etc., and have that history follow us to show the auditor that we have been reviewing them every month.
So what we will do is that we'll basically provide just as we've done the migrate, we'll basically provide a button where you basically can go to whatever companies you want and essentially say that you want a copy of these reports in V4. And we will essentially move those reports and make it available in V4, where we will essentially call these as legacy reports and make them available in the platform itself.
Few more questions. Mark has a question. In reporting, will Microsoft Excel will be an option like in the V3?
Yes.
Assuming in addition to PowerPoint and Word.
All of the Excel things will be there. We will basically the Word and the PowerPoint are the tough ones. The Excel is very easy, right? So it's 3 lines of code to generate an Excel. So we have not focused on that, but the Word basically was something that we worked on, and the PowerPoint is something that will be coming up shortly.
Jeffrey has a question. Can you reduce the CPU load on lightweight agents on V2 and V3? V3, that's in the earlier versions, what I'm guessing he's asking about.
The new agents basically are much more, are far lesser CPU intensive. I will basically look at the V2, V3 agents and see what is causing the CPU spike. Vishal, if you can take the tenant name from Mark, we'll basically kind of work with him to basically see what needs to be done to optimize this CPU utilization.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, this will be uploaded on YouTube in sometime, Spencer, to answer the question. Just basic question, how do we know which version we are on? Is there a link on how we migrate replicate to V4?
So I explained this right now. We'll basically be posting a guide because this is something that we've just introduced in V3. And not only that, we will basically kind of in next week's call, as I said, we will walk through all of these pieces. We'll allow you to ask questions. You'll look at it, all of those pieces.
Okay, Adam has further posted the Google Analytics code where why is your site allowing Google to capture our system settings? So if you look at the code that he has pasted, it's posting and the path is again is a very long URL, but
Yeah, I looked
Yeah,
at your V3. Your V3 doesn't have this installed, but your V4 does. And it's basic information such as the browser, OS versions, different things like that. But anything that we can get to where we don't have Google, going in and checking to see everything that we're doing on an internal portal that we've already logged in and have verified, I believe shouldn't be there.
Okay, Adam, we'll remove the Google Analytics. Look, this is something that came from the marketing team. They needed some analytics in terms of what features are being used the most, what features are not being used the most, etc. So the easiest way to do that was Google Analytics. But even if I use any other analytics tool, basically we understand the problem, we will remove the analytics piece.
Okay, moving on, Discord server.
We've already given that link, right?
Yeah. Okay. Based on the new CMMC rule, do you think we'll be able to keep using Connect Secure for our CMMC clients? Some are saying that the information we are keeping in CS could be considered CUI. So CUI is really supposed to be marked at CUI. Is there no way that this can be done with the metadata?
This can be done with metadata. We can basically kind of, for example, it's a simple thing, right? Like if you basically don't want to see, if you basically are okay, you essentially set up a field. Then what we can do is that, for example, usernames, we can mask out all the usernames. We can remove the complete, like for example, we're getting data from Active Directory, right? So basically remove all of the email addresses, mask out all the email addresses, mask out all of those pieces. And then pretty much you have a system which is there. The question is that it depends on if you are comfortable with it, we can essentially implement this, and that's not a problem. In terms of CMMC, we ourselves are going to basically be launching CMMC compliance as one of the compliance tracks inside of this product itself. So you will be able to do CMMC. We are waiting for the finalization of CMMC, and then on Jan 1st, we pretty much got the notification that CMMC is kind of, there is a final version of it. So our CISO Krishna is basically looking at how to integrate, just as we've done the other standards, how to integrate CMMC and measuring compliance for CMMC within this.
Yeah, but what they're saying is that the data we're collecting, any third-party agent that's on the system that they call the system could be considered and required to be FedRAMP. I hope not, because it'll be disastrous if they do. It's not CUI, and it shouldn't be, but that's the rule. As that some people are saying that, and I'm just bringing that out right now, as they're saying that third parties, that would be RMMs, vulnerability management, all the tools we're using may or may not be allowed.
Yep.
We should find out.
We'll have to find out, but on a different track, we are basically already moving in the way of basically getting FedRAMP compliant. So we are basically working on getting FedRAMP compliant, and that's one of the goals for this particular year.
Okay, moving on. Adam has another question that since we come out with Sprint so quickly, how's our own security and testing? For example, do we test for browser injection, SQL injection, and stuff like that, and CSRF and things like that. So to make sure that our own code is tested before we put it out there.
We basically have a weekly test routine. So for example, this week, basically, we have not run the test routine, basically, but we will be running it on Sunday. So on a weekly basis, we essentially run, we have a VAPT testing, which basically occurs, where we essentially test for all of these pieces. Yes, basically, intermittently, we do find some of these things basically have passed by because of the sprints and because of the pressure that we've created. But as I said, what we expect to do is that we are doing VAPTs basically every weekend. We are essentially doing the VAPT. Now we are essentially going to switch over where basically it becomes part of our CI/CD process. So because we've come to a stage where it is kind of stable, so now we are essentially going to move it into a process where we are going to kind of have phased releases. And before every phased release, it will be, before a release happens, it will essentially be completely tested automatically and for VAPT. And we also have a partner who basically does the VAPT testing.
Adam, on the bug bounty, I will have to circle back. That we can introduce a bug bounty. Yes. Okay. So I think, yeah, as in.
So there was one question from Jerry Johnson.
Jerry Johnson, yeah.
Hosting. No, Jerry, we are not doing all that. That UI is hosted in one place. You will have the complete UI and all of those pieces hosted in your environment. You would need a little bit more of a powerful machine, but basically it'll be completely hosted in your environment. And is patching expected to have a release date? We basically were supposed to release it today, but because of a little bit of the fiasco that occurred last week, we essentially moved the resources from that to work on the core product. We will basically get back to it, and I'll give you a date very shortly. Probably in the next week's call, I'll give you an exact date of when we basically release. Perfect. So I think we're
Okay, I
done
think we
on
are
the
all
question.
caught up.
I have only one thing to do. I just wanted to kind of show everyone that this is basically our office on Friday at 11 p.m. at night. You can see this entire team is basically working to make sure that all of you basically have a product that basically is in good hands. So thank you all, and we will see you on Wednesday where we can do the weekly call. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.